She thought she'd buried her lies on that Miami beach, but when her sunglasses hit the sand, so did her perfect facade. 3 years after her betrayal gutted me, I stood face to face with her again. She didn't know I'd been collecting every lie, every secret. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. And the truth was about to unravel her world in ways she never saw coming. The Miami sun burned high, casting sharp shadows on the boardwalk as Ethan Martinez hunched over his sketchpad in a beachside cafe. His pencil danced across the page, carving a wave's curl with precise strokes. At 32, he'd rebuilt his life as a graphic designer, finding solace in lines and curves after years of chaos. A shout broke his focus, a street performer juggling flaming torches nearby, drawing a crowd. Ethan glanced up, his eyes catching a familiar figure weaving through the onlookers. Lila, his ex-wife. Her laughter hit him first, sharp and practiced, the kind she used for her Instagram reels. She was on her phone, barefoot, her sandals dangling from one hand as she paced the shoreline. Then her sunglasses slipped from her head, landing in the sand. She froze, mid-sentence, her gaze locking onto Ethan's. Her shoulders stiffened, the phone dropped to her side. For a split second, her polished influencer mask cracked, revealing something raw, panic, maybe shame. Ethan didn't move. He just stared, letting her squirm under the weight of their shared history. 3 years ago, Lila had vanished. Ethan had come home to an empty apartment, her yoga mat gone, a note on the counter. I need freedom. No warning, no fight, just 5 words that gutted him. He trusted her, believed her story about a wellness retreat in Asheville. But 2 days later, a DM from a stranger, an old college friend of Lila's, shattered the lie. The grainy photo showed Lila at a dive bar in Key West, her lips pressed against Jake's, a bartender she'd once called just a friend. Ethan's stomach had churned as he recognized the man who'd crashed on their couch after his own breakup, drowning his sorrows in Ethan's beer. Lila had whispered then, "Be kind, he's hurting." Now, Jake's hands were on her, and Ethan was the one left broken. Back in the cafe, Ethan's grip tightened on his pencil. Lila bent to grab her sunglasses, her movements jerky, like she was fighting to regain control. She didn't approach him. Instead, she turned, her pace quickening as she disappeared into the crowd. Ethan exhaled, his chest tight. He hadn't come to Miami for her. He was here for a freelance gig, designing posters for a local art festival. But seeing her stirred something he thought he'd buried, a mix of betrayal and quiet resolve. A voice interrupted his thoughts. "Hey man, you dropped this." A kid, maybe 20, held out a charcoal pencil that had rolled off the table. Ethan nodded, forcing a smile. The kid hesitated, clutching a crumpled sketchbook. "You're good. I've been trying to draw waves like that, but mine look like squiggles." Ethan glanced at the kid's work, messy but earnest. "Keep at it," he said, sliding his own sketchpad over. "Try short, sharp strokes for the foam. Like this." He demonstrated, guiding the kid's hand. The gratitude in the kid's eyes grounded him, a reminder of who he'd become. Not the broken husband Lila left, but someone who built others up. His phone buzzed. A notification from Lila's public Instagram. She'd just posted a story, a selfie with a caption, "Chasing sunsets and good vibes." The lie burned. She hadn't changed. Ethan scrolled through her profile, each post a curated fiction of a perfect life. He stopped at one from last month. Lila and Jake at a rooftop bar, her arm around him, captioned, "Found my forever." Ethan's jaw clenched. He'd spent 3 years piecing himself back together, while she paraded her betrayal like a trophy. He closed the app and stood, leaving cash on the table. The cafe's noise faded as he stepped onto the boardwalk, the ocean's rhythm steadying him. Lila thought he'd disappeared for good, that he'd crumbled under her betrayal. She was wrong. Ethan hadn't just survived, he'd documented everything. Screenshots of her secret messages to Jake. Hotel receipts she swore were spam. A voicemail recorded one drunken night when she thought he was asleep, mocking his trust. He's so naive, it's almost sad. Every piece was a brick in the wall he'd built, not to hide behind, but to stand on. Ethan's steps slowed as he passed the spot where Lila had dropped her sunglasses. The sand still held the imprint of her feet. He could walk away, let her live her lie. But something in her panicked glance told him she knew he wasn't the same man she'd left. He wasn't here for revenge. not the kind that shouted or broke things. His was quieter, sharper, built on truth she couldn't outrun. He pulled out his phone and opened a folder labeled Archive. Inside were files he hadn't touched in months. Emails, texts, a timeline of her deceit. He'd started it to prove he wasn't crazy, that her gaslighting hadn't warped his reality. Now it was leverage, not to destroy her, but to free himself. Lila was in Miami for an influencer event tomorrow, a glitzy party at a downtown hotel. Ethan knew because her posts were careless, geotagging her every move. He wouldn't confront her there. Not yet. But he had a plan, a small, deliberate move to remind her that truth doesn't stay buried. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan headed to his motel, a no-frills place a mile from the beach. He sat at the desk, opened his laptop, and pulled up a blank document. His fingers hovered over the keys, then began to type. Not a letter, not a rant. A single sentence, sharp and final. The truth doesn't lie. He saved it, burned it onto a USB drive, and slipped it into his pocket. Tomorrow, at the event, he'd find a way to get it to her. Not to see her cry, but to watch her face the mirror he'd been holding for 3 years. Ethan woke to the hum of Miami's morning traffic filtering through the motel window. His laptop sat open, the USB drive beside it, holding a single sentence and years of evidence. Last night's plan felt solid, but daylight brought clarity. Lila's influencer event tonight wasn't just a chance to unsettle her. It was a stage to expose the cracks in her facade. He showered, grabbed his sketch pad, and headed to a diner across the street, his mind mapping every step. At the counter, he ordered coffee and opened his phone. Lila's latest Instagram post showed her posing on a yacht, captioned, "Living my truth." The irony twisted his gut. He scrolled through comments, sycophantic praise from followers, but one stood out. A user tagged Jake, asking, "Where's your +1?" No reply. Ethan's pulse quickened. Was Jake already pulling away? He pocketed the phone and sketched, channeling his nerves into sharp lines. The waitress, a woman with a quick smile, refilled his cup. "You an artist?" she asked, nodding at his work. "Something like that," Ethan replied, signing the sketch and sliding it to her. Her grin widened, a small connection that steadied him. He left the diner and walked to the downtown hotel hosting Lila's event, a sleek venue buzzing with preparations. Banners advertised Miami Influence Fest, promising networking and branded cocktails. Ethan blended into the crowd, delivery workers, caterers, influencers snapping selfies. He wasn't here to crash the party. He needed reconnaissance. Near the entrance, he spotted a staffer pinning name tags to a board. Lila's was there, her name in bold cursive. He lingered, unnoticed, memorizing the layout. Open bar, main stage, VIP lounge. Perfect. Back at the motel, Ethan opened his archive folder. Years of pain stared back, screenshots of Lila's flirty text to Jake, bank alerts for unexplained hotel charges, a forwarded email from D. Summers confirming a Miami suite. The worst was the voicemail, her voice slurring. Ethan's too trusting. It's pathetic. He'd saved it not for revenge, but to anchor himself when her lies blurred his reality. Now it was ammunition. He copied the voicemail, texts, and a timeline of her deceit onto the USB, adding his one-line note. The truth doesn't lie. The drive would go in her gift bag, a standard perk for influencers. She'd find it, and the truth would do the rest. Evening fell, and Ethan dressed in a plain jacket, slipping into the hotel as a caterer's shadow. The lobby pulsed with music and chatter. Influencers posed for photos, their laughter loud but hollow. Ethan spotted Lila near the stage, schmoozing with a brand rep, her smile practiced. She hadn't seen him. He moved to the gift bag table, where a distracted staffer sorted swag. Heart pounding, he slid the USB into Lila's bag, tucked between a candle and a skincare sample. No one noticed. He retreated to a corner, watching. Lila took the stage, mic in hand, pitching her authentic journey to the crowd. Ethan's stomach churned at her lies, stories of self-discovery that erased him entirely. She thanked Jake, her rock, and the crowd clapped. But Ethan caught her glance at her phone, a flicker of unease. Had Jake texted, or was she sensing the storm? Ethan left before her speech ended, his part done. He didn't need to see her open the bag. The USB was a seed planted to grow. Back at the motel, Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from Mia, his new girlfriend, a a photographer he'd met at an art workshop. "How's Miami? Need backup?" He smiled, texting back, "All good. Just tying up loose ends." Mia knew enough about Lila. Not the full story, but the shape of the wound. Her support was quiet, steady, the opposite of Lila's chaos. Ethan lay back, staring at the ceiling. The USB was out there now, waiting. Lila would listen, or she wouldn't. Either way, he'd shifted the power. Hours later, his phone lit up again, a notification from Lila's Instagram. A new story. Her alone, on a balcony, captioned, "Sometimes the past catches up. No es mal, no filter." Ethan's breath caught. She'd found the drive. He imagined her in her hotel room, earbuds in, hearing her own voice mock him. Did she flinch? Did her hands shake? He didn't care about her tears. He cared that she couldn't run from the truth anymore. Ethan stood, restless, and walked to the motel's vending machine, grabbing a soda. The night was warm, the air thick with possibility. He checked his archive one last time, ensuring every file was backed up. This wasn't over. Lila's life was built on lies, and lies crumble under pressure. If Jake was already pulling away, if her followers sensed her inauthenticity, the USB would be the push that toppled her. Ethan wasn't here to ruin her. He was here to reclaim himself. And tonight, he'd taken the first step. Ethan's phone vibrated at 2 a.m., the screen lighting up his motel room. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Now. Marriott, room 412. No name, but he knew. Lila. He'd planted the USB in her gift bag at the influencer event, and now the truth was clawing its way out. He sat up, heart steady but mind racing. This wasn't a surprise. She'd found the drive, heard her own voice mocking him, seen the timeline of her lies. He pulled on his jacket, grabbed his keys, and headed out. The confrontation was here. The Marriott's lobby was quiet, the night clerk barely glancing up as Ethan slipped into the elevator. Room 412 was at the end of a long hallway, the hum of AC masking his footsteps. He knocked once sharp. The door opened, and Lila stood there, her eyes red, phone clutched tightly. She stepped aside, letting him in. No words yet, just tension thick enough to choke on. Ethan stayed near the door, arms crossed, watching her pace. She stopped, turned, and finally spoke. "You had no right. No right." Ethan's voice was low, controlled. "You lied for years, Lila. That USB is just your words, your choices." She flinched, tossing her phone on the bed. It was open to a paused audio file. Her voicemail, the one where she'd called him pathetic. "I was drunk," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean it." Ethan didn't blink. "You meant enough to leave. Enough to marry Jake 6 months later." Her breath hitched, and she sank onto the bed, hands twisting together. He pulled a folded photo from his pocket. The courthouse shot, Lila and Jake holding a marriage certificate, smiling like they'd won. He set it on the table. "This was in a USB too. Care to explain?" Lila stared at it, her jaw tight. "It wasn't about you," she muttered. "Jake was different, exciting." Ethan stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "Exciting enough to gaslight me? To make me think I was crazy for asking about hotel receipts?" She looked away, her silence louder than any excuse. Ethan opened his phone, pulling up a screenshot, a bank transfer from their joint account to D. Summers, dated a week before her supposed retreat. "You used our money for your affair," he said. "I found it after you left." Lila's head snapped up, eyes wide. "I paid you back," she stammered. Ethan shook his head. "You paid for your new life, not my trust." Her hands trembled, reaching for the photo, but stopping short. "I didn't know how to stop," she whispered. It was easier to keep lying. He leaned against the wall, letting her words hang. "You build a brand on authenticity, Lila, but it's all fake. Your followers don't know you. Jake didn't either, did he?" Her gaze dropped, and Ethan caught the crack in her armor. "He left me," she admitted, voice barely audible. "Last month. Said I was too much drama." Ethan nodded, unsurprised. "And now you're here, thinking I'll fix you." Her eyes met his, desperate. "I just wanted you to understand." "Understand?" He stepped forward, voice rising for the first time. "Understood when I found your text to Jake. When you laughed in my face and called me paranoid. I understood when you walked out and left a note like I was nothing." Lila stood, closing the distance, her hands raised as if to plead. "I'm not that person anymore," she said. Ethan held her gaze, unflinching. "Then why are you still lying?" She froze, caught. He pointed her phone. Your last post, 3 hours ago. Grateful for my rock. Jake's gone, but you're still selling the story. Lila's mouth opened, then closed. She sank back onto the bed, defeated. Ethan pulled another item from his pocket, a USB, identical to the one in her bag. This has everything, he said. Every text, every receipt, every lie. I'm not posting it. I'm not ruining you. But you'll carry it, knowing it exists. He set it beside the photo. Lila stared, her breathing uneven. Why are you doing this? She asked. Ethan's answer was calm, final. Because you need to see what you broke. And I need to know it can't touch me anymore. He turned to leave, but Lila grabbed his arm. Wait, there's something else. Her voice cracked, urgent. Jake wasn't the only one. There was someone before him. Ethan stopped, his pulse spiking. A new name? A new betrayal? He faced her, eyes narrowing. Who? Lila hesitated, then whispered. Ryan. My manager. It was just once before Jake. Ethan's mind flashed to Ryan, the slick guy who'd booked her first influencer gigs. Another piece clicked into place. You didn't just cheat, he said. You built a life on it. He pulled his arm free and walked out, her plea fading behind him. In the elevator, Ethan's phone buzzed. Mia, checking in. You okay? He texted back, better now. Lila's confession didn't hurt. It clarified. She wasn't his burden anymore. He stepped into the night, the Miami air warm and alive. The USB in her room was his final move, not to destroy her, but to free himself. Lila's world was crumbling, and he didn't need to push. The truth was enough. Ethan walked away from the Marriott, the night air sharp with salt and possibility. Lila's confession about Ryan, her manager, echoed in his mind, not a wound, but a confirmation. Her life was a house of cards, and the USB he'd left her was the wind. He didn't need to see her fall. He'd already won by standing tall. His phone buzzed as he reached his car. Mia again, heading to bed. Call me tomorrow? He texted back, promise. Her steadiness anchored him, a contrast to Lila's chaos. By morning, Ethan was back at the beachside cafe, sketching a new design for the art festival. His pencil moved with purpose, each line a step further from the past. His phone lit up with a notification. Not Lila, but a local news alert. Influencer Lila Carter's brand in crisis after leaked audio. Ethan froze, clicking the link. A grainy clip, unmistakably Lila's voice, was circulating online, her drunken voicemail from years ago, mocking his trust. Someone had posted it, not him. He scrolled further. A second post from an anonymous account tagged as Jake's new girlfriend exposed Lila's affair with Ryan, complete with screenshots of flirty emails. The internet was ruthless. Comments tore into Lila's authentic persona, her sponsorships unraveling as brands distanced themselves. Ethan set the phone down, his coffee untouched. He hadn't leaked the audio. Lila must have shared the USB, maybe with Jake or Ryan, and it backfired. Her lies were now public, her curated life exposed as fiction. He felt no joy, only a quiet release. His role was done. The truth had its own momentum. He paid for his coffee and walked to the festival site, where volunteers were setting up booths. A young artist, the same kid from yesterday, waved him over. Your sketch tip worked, the kid said, showing a sharper wave drawing. Ethan nodded, offering pointers, his focus on building, not breaking. His phone buzzed again, a DM from an unknown account. You were right. I am sorry. Lila. He didn't respond. Instead, he blocked the number and kept working, hanging posters with the festival crew. Hours later, a colleague mentioned Lila's name. Heard she lost her apartment, the guy said. Couldn't pay rent after her deals fell through. Ethan shrugged, hammering a nail into place. Her downfall wasn't his victory. His life was. That evening, Ethan met Mia at a pier restaurant, the ocean glittering under string lights. She slid into the booth, her camera bag beside her. Saw the news, she said, her tone careful. You okay? Ethan sipped his water, meeting her gaze. I didn't leak it. She did this to herself. Mia nodded, her hand brushing his. You don't need to carry her anymore. He squeezed her fingers, grateful for her clarity. They ordered tacos, talked about her latest photo project, and laughed about getting lost on a recent hike. The normalcy felt like freedom. Later, Ethan checked his phone one last time. Lila's Instagram was gone, deactivated. Her Twitter was silent, too. A quick search showed her agency had dropped her, citing brand misalignment. Jake's girlfriend kept posting, each update digging deeper into Lila's past. Ethan closed the app. He didn't need to watch her spiral. He'd seen enough. Back at the motel, he pulled out a letter he'd written years ago, not to Lila, but to himself. It listed every moment he'd doubted his worth, every time she'd made him feel small. He kept it as a reminder of what he'd survived. Now, he tore it in half, the pieces fluttering into the trash. The next morning, Ethan drove to the festival, his posters lining the entrance. Crowds gathered, kids ran between booths, and artists shared their work. He taught a quick sketching workshop, his voice steady as he guided strangers through basic lines. A woman approached after, thanking him for inspiring her son. "He hasn't stopped drawing since your class," she said. Ethan smiled, handing her a flyer for his next workshop. This was his life now, creating, not destroying. His phone stayed quiet. No more messages from Lila. He didn't check her accounts again. Her world was collapsing, but it wasn't his to clean up. As the festival wound down, Ethan stood by the water, the waves steady and unyielding. He'd given Lila the truth, not as a weapon, but as a mirror. She'd shattered herself looking into it. He turned back to the festival, where Mia waited, her camera catching the last of the sunset. For the first time, Ethan felt no weight, no echo of the past. He was done carrying it. Ethan stood at the edge of the Miami Art Festival, the crowd thinning as the final day wound down. His posters, vibrant with bold lines, fluttered in the breeze, drawing compliment from passers-by. He packed up his sketch supplies, his hands steady, his mind clear. Lila's collapse, her brand ruined, her lies exposed, hadn't brought him joy, only certainty. He'd handed her the truth, and she'd unraveled under its weight. Now, he was ready to let her go for good. Mia approached, her camera slung over her shoulder, a quiet smile on her face. "Your workshop was a hit," she said, nudging him. "You're stuck teaching another one next month." Ethan laughed, slinging his bag over his shoulder. "Only if you're there to document it." They walked to her car, the sunset painting the sky in streaks of orange. Mia didn't ask about Lila. She didn't need to. She'd seen Ethan's calm, the way he carried himself now, unburdened. They drove up the coast, heading to a state park for a weekend hike, a plan they'd made weeks ago. At the park, Ethan and Mia set up camp near a quiet trail. As they built a fire, she asked, "What's next for you?" Ethan poked at the flames, considering. "Keep designing, teaching, maybe open a studio." He paused, then added, "and live without looking back." Mia nodded, tossing a stick into the fire. "You already are." Her words landed softly, a truth he felt in his bones. They ate dinner under the stars, the crackle of the fire mixing with distant waves. Ethan didn't check his phone. No need to. Lila's world was no longer his concern. Days later, back in Miami, Ethan prepared for a community art show he'd organized. The venue, a small gallery, buzzed with local artists setting up easels. He hung his latest piece, a stark wave crashing against a cliff, symbolizing resilience. A teenager, one of his students, helped hang lights, chattering about her own sketches. Ethan listened, offering tips, his focus on her potential, not his past. The show opened, and the room filled with chatter and laughter. Mia arrived, snapping photos, her lens catching Ethan mid-conversation with a guest. "You're in your element," she said later, showing him a candid shot. He looked at it, his eyes bright, his stance open. He barely recognized himself. Midway through the event, Ethan's phone buzzed, a news alert. Lila had posted a public apology on a new, private account. "I hurt someone I loved. I'm starting over, trying to be better." No tags, no filters, just raw words. Ethan read it once, then closed the app. Her words didn't erase the pain she'd caused, but they weren't for him anymore. He'd stopped needing her regret. He turned back to the show, where a local reporter interviewed him about his work. "It's about finding strength," Ethan said, gesturing to his wave painting. "Not in anger, but in moving forward." After the show, Ethan and Mia walked to a nearby diner, the kind with sticky tables and endless coffee. Over pie, he shared the story, not the details of Lila's betrayal, but the shape of his healing. "I thought I needed her to see what she did," he said, cutting into his slice. "But I just needed to see myself clearly." Mia listened, her hand resting on his. "You did," she said, "and you're still here, building something real." He smiled, the weight of years gone. The next morning, Ethan drove to the beach alone. He stood where he'd first seen Lila, the sand unmarked now, her footprints long erased. His phone held no new messages from her, no pleas or excuses. He opened his archive folder one last time, the files untouched since the USB. He selected them all, screenshots, receipts, the voicemail, and deleted them. The app asked, "Are you sure?" He pressed yes. The past was gone, not because Lila had apologized, but because he'd chosen to let it go. As he walked back to his car, a kid skateboarded by, nearly crashing into a vendor's cart. Ethan steadied the cart, earning a nod from the vendor. "You're all right, man," the guy said, handing him a free coffee. Ethan took it, grinning, and drove to the gallery to plan his next class. The road ahead was his work art Mia, a life built on truth, not revenge. Lila's story was hers to carry. Ethan's was his to live.